Welcome to SnoozyTor, where we drift through forgotten worlds and history whispers us to sleep. Tonight's story isn't about heroes or victories. It's about survival, the quiet kind. The kind that shakes long after the guns go silent. You'll follow one soldier, not a name in a book, but a heartbeat buried in the mud. You'll feel the war through his eyes, his silence, his shaking hands. The fear, the gasp, the endless waiting, and the strange peace that follows when the noise finally ends, but never truly leaves. So dim the lights. Let the rain outside keep rhythm. Take a deep breath. And if you listen closely, past the echoes, past the thunder, you might hear what the trenches never let go of. Not the sound of battle, but the sound of a man trying to remember how to live. This is The Trench, a sleep story of war. You wake to the rattle of metal wheels and the low groan of a train cutting through the dark. No one told you where it's going. They just handed you a rifle, a uniform that doesn't fit, and a one-way ticket into the unknown. The windows are painted over with grime so you can't see outside. Only the flicker of lanterns across rows of pale faces, all staring at nothing. Someone coughs. Someone whispers a prayer. The rest just breathe, slow, steady, synchronized like an animal waiting for slaughter. You keep your hands clasped together, pretending the shaking is from the cold. But it's not cold. Not really. It's the kind of night that feels damp, heavy, a night that smells like earth and oil. The train slows. Steam hisses out like the breath of something alive. An officer slides open the door and barks a word you don't understand. Maybe French. Maybe just tired. Either way, it means out. You step down into mud. Not the soft kind, but the kind that grabs. Your boots vanish in the first step, your balance with them. Men stumble all around you, clutching bags, tripping over rails, cursing quietly so the dark won't notice. Somewhere out there, an artillery shell thunders. Distant, almost polite, like a storm rehearsing its anger. No one flinches but you. That's how you can tell who's new. A corporal waves you forward with a clipboard and no patience. Names are read, half remembered, half lost to the wind. He points to the distance, to a line of shadow against a darker horizon. That way, he says. You ask where exactly. He doesn't answer. You follow the man in front of you. You don't know his name, but you already trust his boots. Every few steps, someone mutters a joke that isn't funny. Someone else laughs anyway. The sound feels forced, a weak candle against endless fog. Your pack digs into your shoulder. Your rifle rattles. Your heartbeat won't calm down. You look around and realize everyone else looks exactly like you. Same fear, same confusion, same silent question hanging between clenched teeth. How far until we stop pretending we're ready? The march takes hours or maybe minutes. Time stretches and folds in on itself. When you finally stop, there's no camp waiting. Just a field that smells like smoke and wet hay. You're herded into a barn, the kind that might once have held cows, now holding the next batch of soldiers. You sit on a plank floor slick with mildew. Rats rustle somewhere behind the hay. You think about home, your mother's kitchen, the weight of her hand on your shoulder, the sound of rain on a real roof. You wonder if she's sleeping right now, if she's dreaming of you. You wonder if she'll still recognize you when this is over. The corporal shouts something about rest. You lie down because everyone else does. The straw scratches. The roof leaks. You close your eyes and listen, to snoring, to shifting, to rain slipping through holes in the roof. And under it all, a distant rumble that isn't thunder. Your mind drifts to the stories they told you back home. Glory, honor, adventure. You wonder if those words ever smelled like manure and fear. Someone near you whispers, "How long do you think we'll last?" No one answers. You feel your pulse in your throat. You swallow and whisper, half to yourself, half to the dark. Maybe long enough to forget what dry feels like. You roll over and face the wall. The wood is damp and warm with the breath of too many men. You think, if I die tonight, I'll die surrounded by strangers. Then you think, if I live, I'll still die here, just slower. Outside, the rain picks up again, and you hear the faint whistle of a train already leaving without you. Its echo fades into the distance like the end of a sentence you'll never finish. You move before dawn. Someone shouts up, and a dozen shapes unfold from the straw like ghosts. No one speaks, not because there's discipline here, but because words would freeze in the air before reaching anyone. The sky is the color of dirty tin. The world smells like wet wool and regret. The corporal points east and you go. That's all the instruction you ever get. That way. Mud stretches ahead like an ocean that forgot how to drown things properly. Every step is a negotiation. The earth clings, pulling at your boots as if it wants proof you were ever here. When you lift your foot, the suction pops. Soft, wet, obscene. You pass a dead horse, half buried, ribs showing through hide that shines like tar. No one comments. Someone coughs. Another hums tunelessly, maybe to pretend it's just weather and not despair. Your rifle bangs against your hip. Your pack cuts into your shoulder. The march turns the body into math. Weight, distance, pain, repeat. They told you back home that marching builds character. Here it builds blisters and silence. The road narrows into a rut, flanked by trees stripped naked by shell fire. Every trunk leans, burned, scarred, pointing towards something no one wants to see. You stare straight ahead anyway. If you start counting bodies, animal, human, half-remembered, you'll never stop. Do you remember the last time you walked somewhere without knowing the destination? Would you keep walking if the ground itself begged you not to? Your breath fogs the air in front of you. It almost looks peaceful, like smoke rising from a dying candle. Then you notice how many candles there are, 100 men exhaling the same fear. The rhythm of marching becomes hypnotic. Step, drag, gasp. Step, drag, gasp. Your thoughts dull to a hum. A sergeant yells something about pace. You quicken out of instinct, not respect. The man next to you trips. Someone catches him before the mud does. No one laughs. There's nothing funny left to spend. Hours pass. Maybe more. Time in war doesn't travel forward. It circles. The sun refuses to rise properly, just glows faintly behind clouds as if ashamed to witness this. Your fingers ache around the strap of your pack. Your knees protest with every step, but stopping feels worse. You realize the trick now, the secret no one told you. It's not about bravery. It's about rhythm. If you stop, you think. If you think, you break. So you keep moving. When was the last time you kept going just because stopping would hurt more? How long before survival becomes a habit instead of a choice? A soldier ahead loses his footing and disappears waist deep into a puddle that's really a grave. It takes 3 men to pull him free. He laughs when he's out, high, nervous, half hysterical. Then he wipes his face and keeps walking like it didn't happen. You admire him for that even as you feel your stomach twist. Because you know the mud doesn't forget. It will call for someone else tomorrow. Maybe you. The line snakes through fields that once grew wheat. Now the stalks are splintered sticks poking up from the soil like teeth. A farmhouse smolders in the distance. The roof is gone, but a single curtain still hangs in one window, fluttering. For a moment, it almost looks like a hand waving goodbye. You stop looking at the horizon after that. The horizon never changes. It just keeps promising more mud. Your mind wanders to simpler things. Bread, sunlight, a bed that doesn't crawl. You can't remember the color of grass anymore. Was it as bright as they say? You start to doubt it ever existed. If you closed your eyes right now, could you remember what green looks like? Could you find beauty in a landscape built entirely from gray? The march ends when someone finally shouts halt. You don't know how long you've been walking. An hour, a day, a lifetime. Your legs keep trembling even after you stop. You want to sit, but the mud has already claimed enough of you. So you stand, swaying like a candle in windless air. An officer reads from a scrap of paper. Something about assignments, platoons, coordinates. The words drift away before they reach you. All you hear is the rain. Soft, relentless, eternal. You realize this is it. You're not on your way to the front anymore. You're already here. You take a deep breath. It tastes like rust and rot, and whisper to yourself, so this is where people disappear. Night again. Or maybe it never stopped being night. You can't tell anymore. The clouds are too thick, the air too gray. The world has forgotten what daylight looks like. The march ends at a crooked barn sitting lopsided on the edge of a flooded field. Its roof droops, its walls sag. From a distance it looks abandoned. Up close it smells like the end of everything. You're told this will be home for now. A soldier behind you mutters, "Home's supposed to have a door, isn't it?" No one answers. The corporal's boots squelch as he walks past, shouting for everyone to get inside before the next shell finds curiosity. Inside it's worse. The floor's soaked through, straw that's blackened, soft as rot. Some men lie down immediately, too tired to care. Others stand staring at the rafters, watching shapes move that might be bats or rats or something in between. You find a corner and drop your pack. It lands with a sound like something drowning. You sit back to the wall, legs numb from the march. The wood behind you leaks cold through your coat. Someone strikes a match. For a heartbeat, there's light, a small orange flame reflected in 100 pairs of eyes. The match dies, and so does the illusion of safety. The darkness rushes back like water reclaiming space. You listen. There's always sound here. The whisper of rain through broken shingles. The groan of wood adjusting under the weight of survival. The squeak of something alive beneath the floorboards. You pull your blanket tighter, though it does nothing for the chill. It smells of someone else, sweat, dirt, and maybe fear. You tell yourself it's fine. You tell yourself a lot of things out here. Do you sleep easily in strange places? Could you close your eyes knowing something alive is watching from the dark? A man near the door snores like an engine stuttering through death. Another murmurs in his sleep, saying a name over and over, maybe his wife's, maybe his own. The sound blends with the rain until you can't tell which is sadder. You shift, trying to get comfortable, but comfort doesn't exist here. Every inch of this place is damp. Even the air feels wet. You breathe it in and taste mildew. Something scurries across your boot. You freeze, heart pounding. Then you feel tiny claws climbing up the side of your leg, exploring the folds of your coat. You slap it away too late. The rat squeaks once, indignant, then vanishes back into the straw like it owns the place. You whisper, sorry? Not to the rat, to yourself maybe, for still being startled. When was the last time you felt truly alone? Not lonely, but unseen. Would you rather face silence or company you can't control? Someone near the center lights a cigarette. The glow paints his face for a moment, hollow cheeks, eyes that don't blink. He inhales, exhales, then passes it to another without a word. They share it like communion. You want to speak, to ask where they're from, how long they've been here. But you don't. Names feel dangerous now. If you learn one, you might have to bury it. Instead, you close your eyes. You try to imagine this place without sound. No rain, no breathing, no stirring straw. Just silence. But even in imagination, it's never still. The war hums under everything, a low vibration in your bones. You drift in and out of sleep. Each time you wake, you forget where you are. You think you're back home for half a second. A bed, a window, the smell of soap. Then the rat squeaks again and the illusion dies. You watch your breath rise in thin clouds. You count them one by one until counting feels like prayer. It's not hope. It's just rhythm. Rhythm keeps you sane. Have you ever pretended to sleep just so the world would leave you alone? If you could dream of anywhere right now, where would it be? A gust of wind rattles the boards. Someone curses softly. The barn groans again, tired, ancient, ready to collapse but too stubborn to die. You understand it. You both creak the same way when the night gets heavier. You lie there until your eyelids grow too heavy to hold open. You think about home again, about how quiet it must be. You think about how even if you made it back, you'd never sleep as deeply as you used to. You whisper one last thing to the darkness. Tomorrow will be better. The lie tastes sweet for a second, then fades. You fall asleep to the sound of the rain stitching the roof back together, one drop at a time. By morning, the air itself feels heavier. You step outside the barn and realize the world no longer smells like rain. It smells older, like something that's been left out too long and started remembering it used to be alive. A pale sun hangs behind the fog, low and weak, as if it's ashamed to look directly at this place. A corporal waves for everyone to move. You shoulder your rifle, still crusted with dried mud, and fall into line. The wind shifts. It carries something foul, sour, metallic, and faintly sweet. You've never smelled it before, but your body recognizes it instantly. It's decay. Rot. The scent of things that used to have names. You gag before you can stop yourself. The man beside you just mutters, "You'll get used to it." But you don't think anyone really does. You just stop reacting. You walk past a crater filled with water that isn't quite water. It's too thick, too dark. Something pale floats near the center, half submerged, and you force yourself not to look directly at it. In war, curiosity is just another way to go mad. Have you ever smelled something that clung to your skin long after you left it behind? What would you give to forget a scent that follows you even in dreams? A ruined cart lies tipped in a ditch, wheels splintered, horse gone. Only the harness remains, twisted and stiff. Further down the road, the trees are different. They lean away from the horizon, as if recoiling from what's ahead. The ground starts to change color. Less brown, more gray. It's the kind of gray that feels deliberate, like the earth has gone into mourning. You don't need anyone to tell you you're getting close. You can feel it in your stomach. The front isn't a line on a map. It's a smell, a vibration in the bones, a hum that crawls under your ribs. Do you think the body knows danger before the mind does? Can your skin tell when something terrible is near? You pass a broken signpost, letters half erased by shrapnel. You can make out only one word, heiress. You've heard of it. They all have. No one says anything. A dead bird hangs tangled in barbed wire. Its wings are spread perfectly still like a warning nailed to the sky. Below it, the mud shifts with movement. A rat the size of a cat dragging something unrecognizable back into its hole. You look away. The first trench line comes into view. It's not what you imagined. No clean edges, no neat fortifications. Just a collapsed wound in the earth, bleeding men instead of blood. The closer you get, the worse the smell becomes. Not just rot now. Smoke, sweat, cordite, oil, unwashed bodies. Every scent layered over the other until the air itself feels solid. You breathe shallowly through your sleeve, but it doesn't help. The stench has texture, weight, a taste that sticks to your tongue. A soldier climbs out of the trench to greet your group. His face is caked with grime. Only his eyes move, quick and hollow. He nods, motions for you to follow him down. The descent feels like entering another world, one that doesn't want visitors. The mud sucks at your boots, walls slick with slime. Your first step into the trench sends up a ripple of brown water that smells like every kind of death. You swallow hard. The man behind you whispers, "Breathe through your mouth." You try. It's worse. If fear had a smell, what do you think it would be? Could you breathe calmly if every breath reminded you you're alive by mistake? At the bottom, you see what the wind's been warning you about. Piles of sandbags, some burst open. A tangle of rifles leaning against a wall. Boots sticking out from under a tarp that no one moves. Someone tells you not to worry, they'll be cleared later. You nod, though you don't know what later means here. A cook fire sputters near the dugout entrance, smoke curling low and gray. The smell of burning coffee mingles with the odor of blood. You didn't think coffee could make things worse. You were wrong. Have you ever tasted something familiar in a place it didn't belong? Would you still drink it if it reminded you of home? A young private hands you a tin cup. Tea, he says. You sip. It's warm, metallic, bitter. But it's heat, and heat means life. You thank him. He shrugs like it doesn't matter. Maybe it doesn't. The rain starts again, soft and patient. It washes nothing away. The trench just drinks it in. You sit on a crate back against the wall and close your eyes. You breathe shallowly, counting each breath as if rationing them. You think of all the stories that began like this. Men stepping off trains, walking into mud, thinking they'd return as heroes. Now you understand the truth. No one comes back from here the same. When was the last time you realized you'd crossed a line you could never uncross? Would you keep going if turning back meant living with the smell forever? The corporal calls for lights out. You lie down in the muck and pull your coat over your face. The stench seeps through anyway. You stop fighting it. Eventually, even horror becomes part of the air you breathe. Morning begins with shouting. It always does. The kind of shouting that sounds less like authority and more like desperation wearing a uniform. You open your eyes to gray light dripping through boards. Someone kicks your boot. You stand. That's all the training you need. They told you war was a job. Something you could prepare for, like carpentry or farming or faith. But no one told you how to breathe in mud thick with the memory of people who didn't make it this far. No one taught you how to move when every direction feels wrong. You were shown how to aim, how to clean, how to salute. But not how to bury someone you joked with yesterday. Not how to recognize a face when half of it is gone. Not how to eat lunch beside that same spot tomorrow like nothing's changed. What's the last thing you learned the hard way? Can courage survive confusion? You're assigned to a digging crew today. The sergeant says you're extending the trench line. Feels more like you're burying the earth alive. Each shovelful of mud releases another ghost of the previous shift's sweat. The shovel becomes an extension of your heartbeat. Lift, turn, drop. The rhythm makes you forget you have hands. The mud resists like it knows what you're building won't save you. A private next to you mutters, "They said it would be over by Christmas." You ask him which Christmas he meant. He doesn't answer. He just keeps digging until his shovel hits something soft. He doesn't look down. Neither do you. Would you keep working if you weren't sure what you were building? If every swing of the shovel sounded like a heartbeat, would you stop? Lunch comes, if you can call it that. Canned meat, stale bread, lukewarm tea. You eat fast not because you're hungry but because you've learned time isn't generous. Somewhere beyond the mist, artillery coughs. Everyone pauses mid-bite, heads tilted, waiting for the next sound. When it doesn't come, the world exhales again. You remember training back home, the instructors yelling, the neat rows, the clean uniforms. You'd march under a blue sky and think, maybe this won't be so bad. Now you understand those drills were theater. Every salute, every slogan, every cheer, all rehearsal for something no one could imagine. Do you ever look back at old lessons and realize they were lies? How much of what you know would survive outside comfort? In the afternoon, they send you on a wiring detail, threading barbed wire through the wreckage ahead of the trench. You crawl through muck so thick it hums. Your fingers bleed where the wire bites through gloves. You stop feeling the sting after a while. Pain is just another background noise now. The sky shifts color again, that sickly green-gray that means sunset without beauty. A shell explodes miles away. The sound rolls over the land like thunder remembering what it used to be. Nobody flinches anymore. That's what passes for progress here. You spot something glinting in the mud. A piece of glass, maybe from a bottle, maybe from a mirror. You wipe it clean on your sleeve and catch your reflection. For a second, you don't recognize the man staring back. The eyes look older, the mouth harder. You look like someone else entirely, someone who's forgotten what smiling feels like. You drop the glass and watch it vanish. The mud doesn't even make a sound swallowing it. When did you last look at your reflection and see a stranger? Would you rather forget who you were or remember what you've become? Evening falls like a curtain too heavy to lift. The digging stops only when the corporal says it does. You lean on your shovel, too tired to wipe the sweat and rain from your face. Around you, men slump against the wall, blank-eyed, waiting for the next command. You realize this is what passes for normal now. No one argues. No one dreams. Everyone just endures. The sergeant calls it discipline. You know it's something else. It's surrender disguised as obedience. It's learning to stop expecting anything better. What would you call it? Discipline or survival? Can you tell the difference anymore? Night returns without ceremony. You lie in the same damp corner of the trench. Your hands ache from digging. Your thoughts are mud-colored. Somewhere in the distance, a flare blooms white against the sky. For a moment, it almost looks beautiful, like the stars are remembering you exist. Then it fades and the dark closes in again. You whisper, "They never taught us this part." No one answers. But in the silence, you can almost hear the earth replying, "You'll learn." It rains for 3 days without pause. You stop keeping track after the first. There's no difference between sky and ground anymore, just layers of wetness and varying shades of despair. The trench fills up to your ankles, then to your knees. Every step sloshes. Every movement sounds like breathing from underground. You tell yourself it's only water, but the smell says otherwise. The mud here is different. It's not just soil and rain. It's oil and blood, splinters and bone. It's thick with everything the war no longer needs but refuses to release. And it remembers. You can feel it cling, sucking at your boots like a jealous lover. When you pull free, it sighs. When you fall, it welcomes you back with open arms. No one trusts the ground anymore. It's alive in the wrong way. A man in your section disappears today. One moment he's there, talking, complaining about cigarettes. The next he's gone, swallowed by the earth like it was waiting for him. They find him hours later, half buried, face down, legs still kicking when they pull him out. He doesn't speak afterward. He just stares at his boots, whispering to them like he's apologizing. Do you think the earth remembers what it consumes? How deep would you go before calling it home? You used to hate the mud because it slowed you down. Now you hate it because it doesn't. You move through it like it's part of you, a second skin that never dries. Your uniform used to be khaki. Now it's just brown, every inch soaked in the same color. Even your hands have forgotten what clean feels like. When you lie down at night, the mud lies down with you. It crawls into your sleeves, your collar, your mouth if you're careless. It doesn't care who you were before this. It only cares that you're still breathing, still available. Have you ever lived somewhere that tried to keep you? Would you fight the ground if it decided it wanted you back? You learn to move differently, slow, deliberate, respectful. You test each step before trusting it. Even solid ground can betray you. The men joke that the trench eats those who lie. You laugh, but only because not laughing feels dangerous. By evening, your boots have doubled in weight. Your toes ache. When you finally take them off, you peel away skin with the socks. The smell that escapes is indescribable, rot and iron and something faintly sweet, the scent of decay pretending to be sugar. You try to clean them with a rag, but the mud has already taken root. It's part of you now, threaded into your pores. You remember the stories from training, about valor, honor, courage. None of them mention trench foot. None of them mention how the skin turns gray, soft, and useless. You rub your feet until they bleed because pain at least proves they're still yours. Would you rather feel pain or nothing at all? How much of yourself can you lose before you stop noticing? Later that night, the rain slows to a drizzle. You and the others sit under a sagging tarp, smoking, listening to the soft plop of droplets falling into puddles. The mud gleams under the lantern light, black and endless. You think about all the things it's holding, bullets, bones, promises. Each one buried but not forgotten. The trench is a grave that never stops eating. A soldier across from you says quietly, "If I die here, don't bury me. Just let the mud have me." It's already halfway there. No one laughs. No one argues. It's not gallows humor anymore. It's logistics. Would you fight to be remembered if the ground itself refused to let go? Can something this filthy still be sacred if it keeps you alive? You press your palm into the mud beside you. It's warm. You wonder if it's from the body heat of the earth or the rot beneath it. You pull your hand away and stare at the imprint it leaves, your shape, temporary and small. The next drop of rain fills it in, erasing you completely. You smile at the efficiency of it. Here, even the land doesn't tolerate memory. As the night deepens, a shell lands far away and the ground shivers. You feel it through your spine, your ribs, your teeth. The mud ripples around your boots as if sighing again, content, hungry, endless. You whisper into the dark, "You'll take us all eventually, won't you?" The mud doesn't answer, but you feel its reply in your bones. You first notice them at dusk. The light fades, the world softens, and then, movement. Little shapes darting across the trench floor, slick and sure-footed in the mud. You think they're small at first. You're wrong. They're huge. Fat on flesh and crumbs of rations. Bolder than the living, fearless as gods in a place without rules. Someone once joked that the rats outnumber the soldiers 10 to 1. You suspect the number's higher now. They run over boots, over sleeping men, over memories. You stop trying to chase them off. They always come back. A private named Ellis tries once, kicks one square in the ribs. The rat doesn't run. It hisses, bares teeth and lunges. Ellis screams, fires a round into the dark. By morning, he's assigned to latrine duty and the rats have reclaimed their kingdom. Have you ever lived somewhere that refused to belong to you? What if the real owners were smaller, quieter, and braver than you? You learn their habits. They love the edges of the trench where water pools and food rots. They hide under sandbags, inside helmets, between folds of unwashed blankets. You catch them gnawing on candles, soap, corpses. Nothing goes to waste here. At night, they're the only ones who move freely. You lie awake and listen to the rhythm of their tiny feet. Scritch, pause, scritch, pause. It becomes almost soothing, the heartbeat of this filthy little empire. One evening you're on watch. The moon hides behind clouds, and the air feels thick with rot and rain. A shape scurries past your boot. Another follows. Then 10 more. You realize they're not running from you, they're running with you like a tide. Something dead nearby must have burst open. They pour over it in a frenzy. You force yourself not to look. Could you share space with something that disgusts you? Would you rather fight them or accept their company? Some men feed them. Bits of biscuit, scraps of meat, crumbs of sanity. The logic is simple. Feed what you fear and maybe it spares you. You start doing it too without thinking. A piece of bread placed quietly on the ground before sleep. A truce, unspoken and sacred. One night, a rat crawls across your chest while you're half asleep. You freeze. Its claws dig lightly through your coat. It stops at your throat, sniffs once, then moves on. When it's gone, you can't decide whether to laugh or vomit. Instead, you whisper, "Good night." You mean it? Would you make peace with your fear if it promised to leave you alone? At what point does survival become friendship? The rats are teachers in their way. They show you how to live without hope, how to thrive in filth, how to move without shame. They don't ask questions, don't write letters home, don't dream. They simply exist, and somehow that makes them freer than you. You've seen one drag an entire hand away once. Not a glove, not a scrap, a hand. It vanished into the mud like treasure reclaimed. You didn't report it. There's no report form for that kind of lesson. When a new batch of recruits arrives, you watch them recoil at the sight of the rats. They throw stones, shout, stomp their feet. You don't bother warning them. They'll learn. Everyone learns. The rats always win. Later, as the night stretches thin, you sit by the parapet and light a cigarette. You watch one of them, sleek, gray eyes like wet stones, nibble a crumb near your boot. For a moment, you both just exist in the same silence. You realize it's the first time you've shared peace with another living thing in weeks. You flick ash into the mud and say, "You've adapted better than we have." The rat looks up, unblinking as if it agrees. Then it vanishes into the dark. You envy its confidence. Do you think animals understand war better than we do? If they could speak, would they pity us or thank us? When you lie down later, you can feel them moving again, brushing past your boots, sniffing near your head. You close your eyes and let them be. They're just another part of the trench now, like rain or smoke or fear. They don't judge, don't weep, don't question. They only survive. You start to think maybe that's the purest form of life left. If survival was the only purpose, would you still call it living? Could you envy something that feels no guilt, no grief, no memory? You drift off to sleep with the scratching sound still in your ears. And for the first time in weeks, you don't dream about death. Only movement. Soft, constant, eternal. You stop calling it food after a while. Food implies choice. Food suggests warmth or flavor or mercy. What you eat here has none of those things. It's not a meal, it's maintenance. A daily ritual that keeps the body moving long after the soul has started packing to leave. Breakfast is a gray slab that once pretended to be bread. It's so hard you could carve your name into it with a bayonet. You dunk it in tea, if you're lucky enough to have tea, until it stops cutting your gums. The tea tastes like rust and rainwater. Still, it's the best part of your day. The bully beef comes next. You've stopped asking what animal it used to be. The texture answers the question for you. Greasy, trembling, pinkish gray. It smells faintly of wet rope. Sometimes you heat it over a candle and convince yourself the warmth counts as seasoning. Sometimes you just eat it cold and tell your stomach to stop complaining. Would you eat something that made you sick if it meant you'd live another day? When does nourishment become punishment? You used to think of meals as social things. Laughter, conversation, a pause between hours. Here it's just another task. A quiet contest between hunger and disgust. You and the others sit in a half circle, each man with his tin, each pretending not to notice what the other is swallowing. The silence feels heavier than any explosion. You don't talk during meals anymore. Talking wastes air and taste. Sometimes the cooks manage a stew. That's a good day. They boil whatever they find, meat, roots, tin scraps, hope, into something vaguely edible. It's beige, lumpy, and always too hot in the middle and too cold at the edges. You never ask how long it's been boiling or what floated in it before you arrived. You just eat until your spoon hits the bottom, and for a few minutes you feel human again. Then the hunger comes back. It always does. It's not sharp anymore. It's patient. It waits for you to forget, then reminds you it's still there, a soft gnawing in the ribs, a whisper behind your heartbeat. Can hunger become a kind of faith? If emptiness becomes familiar, does it stop hurting? You dream about food constantly. Not the tins and biscuits here, but real food, your mother's stew, fresh bread, an apple so crisp it sings when you bite it. You wake up with your teeth clenched, mouth dry, heart pounding like you just sprinted across a field. Sometimes you can almost taste it. That's the cruelest part. One night you find a tin of jam. You don't know how it got there, maybe dropped from a supply crate, maybe stolen. You don't care. You open it with trembling hands. The smell hits you first, sweet, sharp, alive. You eat with your fingers, licking the syrup from under your nails, closing your eyes so you can pretend it's sunlight. For the first time in months, you feel something close to joy. You share what's left with the man next to you. He weeps quietly after one bite. Neither of you say why. Have you ever tasted something so simple it felt like a memory? Would you share your last sweetness or keep it to yourself? There are stories about men eating rats. No one admits it, but no one denies it either. You don't judge. You've looked at a rat before, fat, warm, living, and wondered. That's all it takes. A single wondering. Once it enters your mind, it never fully leaves. You've eaten mold before. Not by choice. You scrape the green off the bread and tell yourself it's just color. It's easier if you eat fast. It's easier if you don't think. You've seen a man fish a tin out of a puddle that smelled like blood and eat it anyway. You understood. There's no shame in survival. Only proof. Would you trade dignity for one more day? What's the smallest comfort you've ever called a miracle? The officers sometimes get better food, butter, jam, maybe even eggs. You used to resent that. Now you just nod. Let them have their butter. You have your hunger and it's honest. Dinner ends the same way every night. You close the tin, wipe your spoon on your sleeve, and stare into the mud as if expecting it to answer back. It doesn't. It never does. But sometimes, when the rain slows and the air smells faintly of smoke and tin, you imagine you can hear something beneath it all. The sound of every soldier, past and present, chewing in silence, the choir of the starving. You lean back against the trench wall, hands folded over your stomach. Full or empty, it doesn't matter anymore. Your body has learned that both feel the same. Do you think hunger ever forgets you? If peace came tomorrow, would your body still wait to starve? Mail call doesn't follow a schedule. It just appears. A man with a canvas sack trudges through the trench, calling names that sound foreign even when they're yours. Half the names belong to ghosts. He calls them anyway. It's tradition. Maybe it's superstition, as if saying the names keeps them real for one more day. When he calls yours, your heart stumbles. You raise a hand without meaning to. A folded envelope, smudged with fingerprints and rain, lands in your palm. It feels warm, alive. A heartbeat from somewhere that still smells of bread and dry wood and safety. You stare at it for a long time before opening it. You trace the handwriting with your thumb like it's a face. Sometimes the ink has bled, the words blurred, as if they traveled through fog to find you. You read slowly, carefully, afraid to reach the end. Your mother writes about the garden. Your sister mentions a dance. Your father adds a line about being proud. The world they describe doesn't make sense anymore. It's too clean, too soft, too far away. When was the last time someone's words felt like home to you? Do you think paper can carry warmth across oceans? You write back that night. You always do. Even if your fingers shake. Even if your pencil is a splintered stub and the only thing to write on is the back of an old ration label. You start with the usual, I'm fine. You're not, of course, but the lie writes itself easily now. You say the lads are in good spirits. You say the food's improving. You say you'll be home soon. You fold the paper carefully, sealing the lie like a prayer. It's the most hopeful thing you've done in weeks. Would you lie to protect someone's peace? If truth only causes pain, is silence more humane? Some men write every day even when there's nothing to say. They write to wives, mothers, strangers, anyone. It's not communication, it's survival. Putting words on paper reminds you you're still human, that your mind hasn't sunk entirely into the mud. You've read other people's letters too. You're not proud of it. But when mail's late, curiosity becomes hunger. You find a scrap half buried near the dugout once. A letter from a woman named Mary. It starts mid-sentence. I dreamed you came home but you couldn't speak. You don't know who she was writing to. You finish reading it anyway. Feels like stealing a heartbeat. There's censorship, of course. Whole sentences blacked out with thick lines, whole emotions erased for the sake of morale. You learn to read between them. The gaps say more than the words ever could. You start writing that way too, vague, careful, hopeful in all the right places. You master euphemism. It's been a bit rough means I watched a man die today. Weather's been poor means we haven't seen the sun in months. It's a language only the broken understand. Would you want to know the truth if it came wrapped in grief? Could you love someone who never told you how bad things really were? Sometimes mail doesn't come for weeks. You wait anyway. You listen for the sound of that sack brushing against the boards. You listen like a child waiting for Christmas, though what you're really waiting for is proof you still exist somewhere else. That you're still someone's son, someone's lover, someone's thought. The silence between letters is its own kind of punishment. One man in your unit stops getting mail altogether. His name is Walker. He used to hum when the mail came even before hearing his name. Now he just sits there. When new letters arrive, he doesn't look up. He doesn't even flinch. It's like the war finally ate the last thread connecting him to the world. A week later, he walks into no man's land and doesn't come back. No one says why. They don't have to. How long could you wait before silence starts to feel louder than words? If no one wrote to you again, would you still write back? Sometimes the letters come to the wrong man. Names smudged, ranks confused. You open one and realize it's not meant for you. A wife writing to a husband who's already gone. You read it anyway. You can't help yourself. It's beautiful and terrible in equal measure. You fold it carefully and slip it into your pocket, as if carrying someone else's hope can balance your own despair. You start keeping all the letters, yours and others, tucked into your tunic, sealed in wax paper when you can find it. They're your armor now, layers of home pressed against your chest. Each page is a reminder that the world is bigger than this trench, even if you'll never see it again. Would you carry words like armor even if they hurt to touch? Do you think hope can rot, or does it just fade quietly? At night, you pull out the latest one and read by candlelight, lips moving silently, pretending you're not alone. Outside, the rats scurry and the guns mutter, but for a few minutes you're elsewhere. You're listening to someone's voice echo across time, gentle and impossibly kind. You close your eyes and whisper back, not to them but to the idea of them. The person they remember you as. The one you left behind. And in that moment, you almost believe he's still real. It doesn't sound like danger at first. No whine, no blast. Just a shift, a strange quiet like the air itself forgot what to do. Then comes the smell. Not of smoke or rot, but something chemical, sharp, and alien. Your body knows before your mind does. Your throat tightens. Your chest stings. Someone shouts the word you'll never forget. Gas. The world turns to panic. Men scramble in the dark, clawing at their kits, knocking each other into the mud. You find your mask, but your hands won't listen. The straps twist, the rubber slips, the buckle catches. You can't see, can't breathe, can't think. Your lungs seize like fists. By the time you get it on, the air has already found you. Have you ever felt the air turn against you? What would you do if every breath felt like betrayal? You breathe through the mask, shallow, ragged. The lenses fog over. Your field of vision shrinks to 2 trembling circles, misted with your own breath. You hear coughing nearby, the kind that starts human and ends like gurgling water. You try not to look, but you do. You always do. The fog creeps low, thick and green, glowing faintly in the dim light. It moves like a living thing, slithering over sandbags, filling every hollow. You see shapes writhing inside it. Hands reaching up, grasping at nothing, clutching at throats. Then they go still. You don't scream. You just sit there and listen to the sound of people learning to drown on dry land. Would you rather die fast or see what waits between breaths? If you saw death coming for others, would you look away or bear witness? They tell you later the gas is heavier than air. That it sinks into the lowest places first. Trenches, ditches, lungs. That means the deeper you hide, the faster you die. There's no safety in cover anymore. You start sleeping with your mask strapped across your chest, like a lover you can't trust. Chlorine hits fast. Mustard gas is worse. It's patient. It clings to fabric, skin, dreams. You might survive the attack only to wake days later covered in blisters, blind, choking on your own lungs as they fill with water. There's no drama to it. No heroism. Just the slow, quiet undoing of everything human. You hear stories of remedies. Breathing through a piss-soaked rag. Smearing your face in mud. You do both without shame. Pride means nothing when the air wants you dead. What would you be willing to lose to keep breathing? Would you give up dignity for another day of life? Once, during a lull, you take off your mask for a moment. You just want to remember what real air feels like. It burns. Not enough to kill, but enough to remind you that breathing isn't always a gift. The smell never leaves, acid and rot and something you can't name. It seeps into your uniform, into your skin. Even the rain can't wash it out. You dream about it at night, the gas. You see it rolling in again, soft and deliberate like a tide. You wake up choking, clutching your throat, eyes watering, mask already in your hand. You're not asleep anymore, but it doesn't matter. The air still feels wrong. Can fear stay inside your lungs? What happens to the body when it forgets how to trust oxygen? When the wind shifts, you freeze. It could be harmless mist or it could be death. You'll never know until it's too late. Even a breeze becomes suspect. You start to envy the rats again. They breathe without worry, without care. You can't remember what that feels like. There's a man in your unit named Palmer. He didn't get his mask on in time. He's alive, technically. But his voice is gone, burned away by something that shouldn't exist. He sits in the corner at night, staring at nothing, mouth open, lungs still fighting for a war they already lost. You think about him when you inhale. You think about him every time you dare to exhale. Would you keep breathing if every breath hurt? What kind of courage is it to keep living in a world that poisons you for trying? Days later, the wind carries a new smell. Rain, smoke, decay. Normal things. You breathe deeply for the first time in weeks. Feels like a miracle. But even as the air fills your lungs, you wait for the pain. You wait for the burning, the choking. When it doesn't come, you almost cry. Not from joy, from disbelief. You look up at the gray sky, the same one that's been above you all this time. And you wonder, how can something so gentle carry so much death? How can air decide who lives and who doesn't? Have you ever feared the very thing that keeps you alive? Would you forgive the air if it learned to kill you once? You put your mask back on anyway, just in case. Because out here, every breath is borrowed. And sooner or later, the air always comes to collect. You don't earn promotion out here. You inherit it from the dead. One morning, a sergeant calls your name. He doesn't look at you when he says it. He just mutters, "You're corporal now," and walks away. That's it. No ceremony. No applause. You're not chosen. You're left behind. Your stripe isn't stitched with pride. It's inked with absence. You outlived someone who shouldn't have died first. At first, it feels meaningless. Then the silence sets in, the kind that follows every order you give. Because now, when you speak, people listen. They have to. Their lives depend on it, and you can hear that weight in every breath they take. Would you want to lead if it meant being the first to blame? How does authority taste when it's earned through survival? The men don't salute you. They nod, wary, tired. They know what you know. Rank doesn't mean knowledge here. It means you're slightly less broken than the ones beside you. Your first task is as absurd as it is cruel. Organize a work detail to repair a trench that won't survive the next rain. You repeat the orders you were given, knowing they're pointless. They follow anyway because that's what soldiers do. You watch them dig, shovel after shovel, the mud swallowing their effort whole. And you realize something chilling: command is theater. A ritual to keep despair from mutiny. Would you follow orders you knew were useless? What keeps obedience alive when belief is gone? You give pep talks sometimes. You hear yourself say things like, "Hold the line," or "It'll be over soon." The words come out hollow, pre-chewed by the mouths of 100 dying officers. But the men nod anyway. They need the lie, and you need to believe it sounds convincing. One night, a private refuses to climb the parapet. He's shaking too hard to move. You tell him to stand up. He doesn't. You shout. You threaten. Finally, he looks at you, eyes empty, face pale, and says, "You go first." You do. Because that's what command means here. You move first so someone else might move at all. The bullet misses you both, but the sound stays. Could you demand courage from someone if you didn't have any left? When does leadership stop being duty and start being guilt? They say morale is part of your job now. You're supposed to keep the men steady. But how do you steady a ship that's already underwater? You share cigarettes, tell small jokes, give meaningless tasks just to fill the hours. You even fake optimism, a smile you can't feel, laughter that sounds like coughing. You've become part officer, part ghost. At night, you stay awake long after the others sleep. You listen to them breathe. You count them, 1, 2, 3, 4. The count never stays the same for long. Every morning, someone's missing. You mark the absence on your clipboard with a pencil stub and no emotion. Emotion takes too much time. The paperwork follows you everywhere. Supply lists, damage reports, casualty logs, pages that turn men into numbers. You used to hate bureaucracy. Now you cling to it. Filling out forms gives structure to chaos. It's the only way to pretend this still makes sense. Would you rather write the truth or erase it to survive? Can ink atone for silence? Sometimes when you give orders, you hear your old sergeant's voice coming out of your mouth. The same tone, the same forced calm, the same empty certainty. You hated that voice once. Now it's the only one that works. It feels wrong but necessary, like wearing someone else's skin to stay alive. A young recruit asks you once, "Sir, how do you know what to do?" You look at him, at his clean uniform, at the fear that still looks new on his face. You almost tell him the truth. You don't. You just pretend until someone believes you. Instead you say, "Experience." He nods. You both know it's a lie. You used to think leadership meant strength. Now you know it means endurance. The ability to keep walking while carrying everyone else's ghost. Would you take charge if it meant losing pieces of yourself each day? Is survival a victory if it turns you into someone you wouldn't follow? When the shelling starts again, the men look to you. You can't show fear anymore. You can't freeze. You stand, shout orders, point, direct. Half instinct, half performance. When it's over, you find your hands shaking so violently you can't light a cigarette. One of the men does it for you. He doesn't say anything. He doesn't have to. He knows. You exhale smoke, the only clean thing left in the air, and stare at the ruined ground ahead. There's no glory here. Only gravity, pulling everything down one rank at a time. And as you stand there, boots sinking into the muck, a stripe on your sleeve that feels more like a scar, you whisper to no one, "I didn't choose this." The mud doesn't answer. It never does. They call it leave, as if you can ever truly leave. The word sounds gentle, like release, like mercy. But when they hand you the slip of paper, you don't feel relief. You feel panic. For the first time in months, you're being sent away from the only world you know. The mud, the noise, the endless rhythm of survival. The journey begins in silence. A truck, a train, a blur of faces too clean, air too light. You clutch your rifle even though you're told you won't need it. Your fingers don't believe them. Neither does your heartbeat. You pass through fields that still have grass. Villages that still have roofs. Birds. You'd forgotten about birds. The sound of them makes you uneasy. It's too high, too alive. The wind smells of soil instead of smoke. You should feel joy. You only feel distance. Have you ever left a place and felt like it stayed inside you? Can peace feel more foreign than war? When you arrive, people smile. They see the uniform and call you hero. The word slides off you like rain on metal. A woman hands you bread. A child waves a flag. You nod, smile, do all the right things. But their eyes are too bright. Their hands too steady. They don't flinch when a door slams. You do. At the rest station, they tell you to wash, to sleep, to eat. You do all three and feel worse for it. The water is cold, the food rich, the bed soft, too soft. You wake up 3 times that night, gasping, reaching for your mask that isn't there. You tell yourself you're safe. Your body disagrees. Can comfort hurt when you've forgotten how it feels? Would you rather wake to silence or the sound of something familiar, even if it's terrifying? The other soldiers at the station try to celebrate. They laugh too loudly, drink too much, flirt with nurses who pretend not to see the cracks in their faces. You join them once, but the laughter feels wrong in your throat. Too sharp. Too fragile. You excuse yourself and step outside. The night air is still. You almost miss the smell of cordite and mud. Someone plays a piano inside, a waltz, slow and elegant. You close your eyes and it turns into shellfire. You open them again and you're back in the quiet village. It's disorienting, like falling through 2 worlds that refuse to meet. Have you ever been homesick for a place that broke you? Can the mind crave chaos just because it knows the rhythm? You wander the streets the next morning. Shops, church bells, fresh bread. You stand outside a bakery and watch the glass fog with warmth. Inside, people laugh. They have no idea what laughter costs now. You want to tell them, but what would you say? How do you explain mud that breathes, air that kills, and silence that screams? You don't. You just walk away. The locals thank you for your service. You nod, say, of course. You shake hands with men who will never hold a rifle, who will never scrub blood from their sleeves. They look proud of you. That's the cruelest part. You wish you could deserve it. Would you rather be praised by those who don't understand or forgotten by those who do? If you could make people see what you've seen, would you? After a few days, time unravels. You can't tell morning from evening. The clocks tick too loud. The air feels too light. You miss the weight of your rifle. You miss the smell of smoke. You miss the certainty of knowing what to do next. Here, every decision feels pointless. You start to count things, steps, breaths, seconds, just to feel in control again. You think about going home, your real home, but you don't. You're not ready to see your family's eyes, to feel their joy crash into your emptiness. You write them instead. A short letter. Doing well. Enjoying the rest. Another lie, polished and practiced. When they call your name again, telling you your leave is over, you almost smile. The relief surprises you. You shouldn't want to go back, but you do. Because there, in the mud, you understand the rules. You know what to fear. You know how to survive. Here you just exist, unarmed, exposed, unfinished. Would you return to the place that broke you just because you knew how to live there? When survival becomes identity, what's left when it ends? You pack your things. You button your coat. You step back into the boots that never dried. As the train pulls away, you look out the window one last time. The world slides past, quiet and bright. It doesn't look real. Maybe it isn't. You close your eyes and let the rhythm of the wheels take over. Thump, thump, like distant shellfire. And for the first time in days, you fall asleep. Not peacefully, just predictably. It's the closest thing to comfort you remember. At first, you count them. Names, faces, boots. You remember who laughed the loudest, who told stories by the fire, who kept the lucky coin in his pocket. But after a while, the numbers outgrow your memory. There are too many. Too fast. Too constant. You start to notice the silence before you notice the loss. Someone doesn't answer during roll call. Someone's cup stays empty at breakfast. Someone's laughter fades from habit. No announcement. No ceremony. Just subtraction. You dig shallow graves because that's all there's time for. The ground is too wet for anything deeper. You use your shovel, your hands, your will. Sometimes you mark the spot with a helmet or a stick. Most times you just cover them and move on. The rain erases it all anyway. Have you ever tried to remember too many faces at once? At what point does grief stop being pain and start becoming routine? You tell yourself you'll come back for them, build a cross, say a prayer, something. But you never do. There's always another shell, another scream, another name. Eventually you stop promising. You still talk to them though. You whisper apologies into the mud. You tell them what they missed, how cold it's been, how quiet. You don't expect answers, but sometimes you imagine one. A breath against your ear, a word caught in the wind. You don't fear it. You welcome it. The living have stopped talking anyway. One night, you're on watch and you see a figure at the far end of the trench. He's standing where Miller used to stand. You blink and he's gone. You don't mention it. No one does. Everyone sees ghosts here. Some just keep it to themselves. Would you want to see the ones you've lost, even if it meant never escaping them? Do you think the dead linger, or do we hold them in place by refusing to forget? There's no smell like death in the trenches. It clings. Sweet and sour at once. A perfume of rot, mud, and memory. You stop noticing it until you leave for a moment. Then it hits you like a wall, thick and intimate, like walking into a room full of old friends. You've seen every kind of death. The clean ones, quick and merciful. The slow ones, where the body takes hours to realize it's already gone. You've seen men die clutching letters, others die mid-joke. You stop trying to predict it. Death here doesn't have logic. Just happens. After a while, you stop flinching when it does. You drag the bodies aside, cover them, light a cigarette, keep moving. Not out of cruelty, but necessity. The trench doesn't pause for mourning. It absorbs it. Could you keep walking if the ground itself was built from those you lost? When survival demands forgetting, what happens to love? There's one face you can't forget. You see it every time you close your eyes. He was younger than you. Always humming under his breath, even during shell fire. He died quietly, almost politely. You buried him yourself. Sometimes you still hear him humming when the wind moves through the boards. It's beautiful and unbearable. The officers don't talk about the dead anymore. They use numbers, casualties, losses, adjustments. You copy the words down in your reports, each one a brick in a wall that keeps you from breaking. The language of survival isn't honest, it's efficient. You used to write home about the fallen. Now you don't. What could you say? He was brave. He died well. None of it means anything. There's no good way to die in mud. Would you rather die remembered or live forgotten? If words can't honor the dead, what can? Sometimes you dream of all of them, not as corpses but as they were before. Around the fire, laughing, alive. You wake up smiling, then remember. You try to go back to sleep, but you can't. You realize the only difference between the living and the dead now is breath. And even that feels temporary. When the shelling ends and you crawl out again, you see the same faces reflected in puddles, not as ghosts but as memories that refuse to die properly. You nod at them. It feels respectful. You've stopped fearing death. Not because you're brave, but because you've met it so often you've run out of ways to greet it. Now it's just part of the landscape, like mud, like rain, like you. Do you think death gets tired of taking? If it did, would you forgive it? You stand at the edge of the trench, looking out across no man's land, and wonder how many bodies the earth can hold before it starts to remember. Then you smile, quietly, without reason, because you already know the answer. Out here, belief is just another weapon, dull, dented, but still sharp enough to hold. You stop praying to God. You start praying to patterns. Left boot first. Button the coat twice, not 3 times. Tap the rifle barrel before every shot. Tiny gestures, meaningless, and yet they feel like the only things keeping you alive. Someone laughs and calls it superstition. But the next day, the man who laughed forgets his ritual and dies before lunch. After that, no one laughs again. Have you ever invented luck just to stay sane? Would you rather believe in nonsense than believe in nothing? You've seen it all. Men who talk to their bullets before loading them, men who kiss the mud before climbing over the top, men who whisper names into the dirt before sleeping. You do it too now. You don't even notice when you start. One night, you murmur to your boots, thanking them for holding together. You hear yourself say it out loud and don't feel embarrassed. You just mean it. Rituals spread like rumors. If someone survives a bombardment, everyone copies whatever they did. If he ducked twice, now everyone ducks twice. If he was chewing tobacco, everyone starts chewing. Logic dies first in war. Imitation survives longer. Do you think safety can be borrowed from someone else's luck? When everyone's dying, does belief become contagious? There's a man in your unit named Carver who carries a matchbox filled with teeth. He says they're from his friends, for company. No one questions him. Everyone needs their version of protection. You've got a scrap of cloth you found months ago, blue, frayed, probably nothing. You keep it in your pocket, folded and dry. When things get bad, you touch it, not for comfort, but for continuity. Proof that you still remember the shape of calm. Some carve initials into the wooden planks. Others build tiny shrines out of spent shells and matchsticks. You light candles for men who won't be buried properly. The smoke drifts up, slow and gray, like prayers written in a language the sky stopped understanding. Would you build a religion out of repetition if it gave you peace? Can faith survive when its gods are mud and memory? Sometimes you catch yourself counting breaths, steps, bullets, clouds. Numbers become protection. You start believing that every 10th breath will be safe, every 100 shell will miss. You whisper sequences under your breath during bombardments. The rhythm comforts you. It's meaningless, of course, but meaning has nothing to do with survival. There's also the lucky trench. Every unit has one, a section of the line where fewer men die. No one can explain it. Maybe the angle, maybe the wind. You move there when you can touch the wall and whisper thank you. You know it's absurd. You do it anyway. If a lie keeps you alive, is it still a lie? Would you rather die free of superstition or live chained to it? Some rituals are darker. Men swap dog tags for luck, as if death can't find the right name if you confuse it. They carry bits of shrapnel that nearly killed them, souvenirs from fate. You've got one too lodged deep in your coat pocket. You tell yourself it's just metal, but every time you touch it, it feels warm. You stop questioning why. There's an old saying, when you run out of gods, you make your own. You've met dozens since the war began. The god of bullets, who decides who lives when the sky splits open. The god of mud, who chooses when to swallow boots or bodies. The god of rats, who guards the dead from being too alone. You pray to all of them just in case. You start believing that every act, lighting a cigarette, folding your blanket, scraping mud off your boots, might be the one that decides whether you wake up tomorrow. You do it carefully, reverently. Everything becomes ceremony. Can repetition become religion? Would you trust in your own ritual if no one else did? You notice after a while that the rituals aren't just for survival. They're for remembering. They give the illusion of control, a way to stand against chaos, even if it's only for a heartbeat. Without them, you dissolve. You become part of the mud. One night, during a lull, you and the others share your rituals aloud. It turns into a strange kind of confession. Men trading ghosts instead of stories. By the end, everyone's laughing quietly. It's not joy. It's relief. Because at least your madness matches. And when the next barrage begins, you all do your little gestures in unison. Touching wood, crossing fingers, whispering to the dirt. It looks ridiculous. It is ridiculous. But you live through the night. And that's all the proof you need. You don't remember when it started. The ringing. Maybe after a shell landed too close. Maybe after a dozen did. Now it never stops. A thin, metallic hum lives behind every word, every breath. You've stopped hearing silence altogether. At first, it terrified you, the constant shriek just below thought. But now it's part of you. Like a second heartbeat you never asked for. Have you ever been trapped inside a sound? If silence vanished from your life, would you miss it or fear it? Out here, sound is everything. It's how you survive. You learn to measure distance by thunder, death by rhythm. You can tell a mortar from artillery by pitch, by tone. You can tell if someone screamed in pain or surprise before you even look. The body becomes an instrument tuned to disaster. Your nerves hum like wires, waiting for the next vibration. You sleep through shouting but wake at the scrape of metal. You flinch at laughter now. It's too sharp, too sudden, too alive. The war speaks a language of sound, and you've learned every word. Can the body forget a language once it's been carved into its bones? Would you want to, if forgetting meant losing the part that kept you alive? When the guns fall silent, really silent, it feels wrong. Your muscles twitch, waiting for impact. You can almost hear the next shell forming in the clouds. The quiet presses against you like a weight. Every heartbeat feels too loud, every breath suspicious. Silence becomes the new weapon. It waits. It watches. It makes you imagine what hasn't happened yet. And sometimes that's worse. The birds returned once after a long lull. Their songs made men cry. Not from beauty, from panic. The sound of something gentle felt alien, unbearable. It was proof the world still existed somewhere beyond this trench. That knowledge hurt more than shrapnel. Could you ever trust peace again if it sounded like the thing you lost? Would you rather live with constant noise or constant waiting? There's a rhythm to bombardment. Boom, pause, breath, boom. You learn to move between beats. To eat, to speak, to think only in the gaps. Your words become staccato. A sentence between explosions, a laugh during reloads. Even your dreams follow the rhythm. You wake up mid-boom, your pulse perfectly synchronized. The war becomes music, not melody, percussion. And every soldier is a drum, hollowed and echoing. At night, when the firing stops, you hear other sounds you used to miss. Boots squelching, rats squeaking, someone praying too softly to be heard. You try to focus on them. They anchor you to the present. But sometimes you hear more than that. Footsteps that don't belong. Voices with no bodies. A name you shouldn't remember whispered in the static of rain. If memory had a sound, what would yours be? Do ghosts speak in silence, or do we just hear them when the noise stops? You tell yourself it's nerves. But deep down, you know you've crossed a line between what's real and what echoes. When you close your eyes, the hum grows louder. It fills your skull until thought dissolves. That's when you feel calmest. Because at least the hum is predictable. The medics call it shell shock. They say the brain can't handle so much noise. They don't understand, it's not the noise that breaks you. It's the stillness that follows. Can silence be louder than sound? Would you surrender peace if it meant forgetting the fear that built you? When you finally go home, you expect the quiet to heal you. It doesn't. Every sound of normal life feels foreign. A clock ticking like distant gunfire, a kettle hissing like gas. You start to realize that the war is still speaking through everything. You just can't convince anyone else to hear it. So you stop trying. You live in the hum. It's safer there. The world outside might go quiet, but inside, the drums never stopped. You're not afraid of them anymore. You nod along. Keep time. Keep breathing. And in the space between each heartbeat, you listen. Not for danger, not for peace, but for the one sound you may never hear again. Silence that means nothing. You thought coming home would taste like forgiveness. Bread, air, sunlight, clean, simple things. But when the train stops and the platform fills with cheering faces, you realize something's wrong. It's too bright, too alive. The colors hurt your eyes. Someone hugs you before you can step off. A mother, a sister, maybe both. You don't recognize them at first. You don't recognize yourself either. Their hands feel soft, almost unreal, like touching a dream. You want to say something, anything, but your throat refuses. Have you ever come home and felt like a stranger? Can love survive when it no longer feels familiar? They tell you they're proud. You nod because that's what's expected. They set a table for you that night. Real plates, clean linen, a roast that steams in the lamplight. The smell makes your stomach turn. It's too rich, too kind. You take a bite and gag quietly, hiding it behind a cough. They don't notice. Or maybe they pretend not to. The taste reminds you of something you can't name. Not meat, not blood, just memory. You push the plate away and say you're full. You haven't been full in years. What would you give to taste something and not remember pain? Can comfort ever feel cruel? Your family watches you with cautious joy, like you're a wounded animal that might bolt. They ask gentle questions about the weather, the officers, your friends. You give them gentle answers. Short, clean, harmless. You don't mention the gas, the mud, the sound of lungs closing. You don't mention the faces. You smile and say it wasn't so bad. They look relieved. You hate yourself for letting them believe it. Later you step outside. The night air smells of rain and grass. No smoke, no blood, no sulfur. Should feel good. Feels empty. The silence scratches at your ears. You find yourself missing the hum, that steady, murderous rhythm that told you the world was still spinning. Can peace be too quiet? The silence feels wrong. What does that make you? You walk through town. People nod at you, smile, thank you. Their voices are light, carefree. You nod back, but every sound feels distant, muffled. You pass a group of boys playing in the street. One throws a rock and it hits a tin bucket with a sharp clang. You drop to the ground before you can stop yourself. The children stare. Their laughter dies. You stand up, dust off your knees, pretend nothing happened. You keep walking. At the market, you see the butcher laying out cuts of meat, the baker dusting flour across a counter. You want to tell them what real hunger looks like, what meat smells like after a week in the trenches. But the words rot in your throat. You buy nothing. You go home empty-handed and feel strangely proud. Would you rather speak the truth and ruin the illusion, or stay silent and protect it? Is honesty still kindness when it breaks the world around you? That night, you dream of the trench again, the mud, the rats, the sound of boots in water. Feels like home. You wake up in a clean bed, sheets white as bone, heart pounding like gunfire. You can't breathe. You sit up, open the window, gulp the cold air until it burns. The stars look too peaceful. You wonder how they stayed bright through all that smoke. You start avoiding people. Their eyes are too open, their laughter too casual. They haven't learned how to look away from life yet. You envy them, but you can't be one of them anymore. You've seen too much. You've eaten things that weren't meant to be eaten. You've watched men die politely, quietly, as if asking permission. And now you're supposed to eat dinner and talk about weather. Can innocence ever be reclaimed once you've tasted despair? Would you trade your memories for peace if it meant losing who you are? You visit your mother's garden the next morning. It smells of wet soil and something sweet. You kneel down and touch the earth. It's soft, warm, alive. You dig your fingers in deeper, expecting mud, decay, bones. There's only life there. You almost cry from confusion. The war feels a million miles away. But the war is still inside you. It lives in your hands, in your lungs, in the way you can't enjoy the smell of flowers without flinching. You stand, wipe your palms on your trousers, and tell yourself you'll try again tomorrow. You don't believe it, but it sounds good enough to say out loud. Can something broken still grow? If the soil forgives, can you forgive yourself? You walk back toward the house, footsteps quiet against the cobblestones. For a moment, you let yourself imagine that this life might fit again, that maybe, with time, you'll learn to taste home without bitterness. But deep down, you know better. The war took more than hunger. It took appetite, and that's something no one can feed back into you. The first dinner feels like theater. Everyone plays their part, the cheerful uncle, the nervous mother, the neighbor who brings too much wine. They speak of harvests, weddings, small-town gossip. The candles glow. The silverware shines. You sit at the far end, smiling when they do, nodding when they laugh. The rhythm feels familiar, but not the language. Every sound feels too sharp. The scrape of forks, the clink of glass, the pitch of laughter. Each one lands like a bullet, precise, intrusive. You stare at the plate in front of you and wonder how anyone can eat without trembling. Have you ever felt surrounded by people but still completely alone? Can warmth feel like noise when you've lived too long in the cold? They ask about the war between bites. Not the real questions, the polite ones. Was it hard? Were you scared? Did you make friends? You answer like a man reading lines he memorized. Yes, sometimes. Good men. They nod, satisfied. No one asks the questions that matter. No one really wants to know what it smelled like when men burned. You glance around the table. Their faces are soft, alive, untouched. You try to picture them here if the roof collapsed, if the air filled with smoke. You can't. The imagination doesn't stretch that far anymore. You envy them for that. Would you protect someone's innocence even if it meant lying to them forever? Is silence a kindness or just another kind of betrayal? Your father raises a toast. To the survivors. Everyone claps. You lift your glass but don't drink. The word survivor catches somewhere between your throat and the past. You survived, yes, but that doesn't mean you're alive. Someone starts laughing at the end of the table, a deep, rich laugh that fills the room. You flinch. Your heart spikes before your brain catches up. You cover it with another smile, the one you've practiced since you got home. But inside, the laughter still sounds like gunfire. The youngest cousin sits beside you, eyes wide with curiosity. He asks if you killed anyone. You freeze, spoon halfway to your mouth. The table goes quiet. Someone scolds him softly, changes the subject. You force a laugh, brittle, artificial. Then you say, "No one worth remembering." They all think it's a joke. You don't correct them. Would you rather be seen as strong or be understood as broken? If the truth made people look at you differently, would you still speak it? You excuse yourself halfway through dessert. The sweetness feels wrong, too indulgent, too easy. In the hallway mirror, your reflection startles you. Clean, upright hole. It feels dishonest. You touch your face as if to find the mud still there. It's gone, but you can't trust what you see. The laughter continues behind you, muffled by walls, blurred by distance. It sounds like another world. For a moment, you imagine you're outside again, listening to life happen without you. You realize that's exactly what's been happening since you got home. Can you return to a life that kept going without you? What part of you stays behind when everyone else moves forward? Your mother calls from the table, asks if you're all right. You say yes. You always say yes. She doesn't press further. She's learned that your yes means don't ask. Later, you sit alone in your room. The windows open and the sounds of the house drift in, dishes, footsteps, laughter. It's peaceful, almost sacred. And still, you feel that ringing inside you, faint, patient, endless. It fills the space where conversation should be. You think of the men you left behind. How they would laugh at this. Candles, comfort, normalcy. You whisper their names into the quiet, one by one, like a prayer no one else will ever hear. Then you blow out the candle. And for the first time that night, the silence feels like company. Morning comes quietly. You wake before dawn, not because you want to, but because you always have. Old instincts, light gray, boots on, rifle checked. Except there's no rifle now. Only the faint ticking of the clock and the ache in your knees that never quite leaves. You lie still, waiting for someone to shout, for a whistle to blow. Nothing does. The silence feels wrong again, too complete, too fragile. Eventually, you get up because lying still feels like waiting to die. Have you ever kept a habit long after the reason for it was gone? Can peace feel like disobedience when survival was once your only order? You wash, dress, eat. The motions are smooth, automatic. Each movement a ritual carved into bone. You still fold your blanket with military precision, still check corners for shadows. Your hands move with the confidence of someone who doesn't trust them. Breakfast is quiet. Your mother hums a song you almost remember. You count the seconds between each note like she's firing rounds. You used to eat with 10 men in a line, mud in your tea, smoke in your throat. Now there's porcelain, silver, sunlight, but no taste. Everything feels like pretending. What happens when routine outlives purpose? Is survival still survival when there's nothing left to survive? You take a job at the mill because that's what's expected. The foreman shakes your hand, tells you he's glad to have a good man back from the war. You nod. You don't tell him your grip is weaker now. That every time the machinery clanks, your stomach flips like a shell just landed. The days repeat. Or sleep. Repeat. It feels like marching. One foot in front of the other, no destination, just movement. Your body obeys, your mind drifts somewhere else. Sometimes back to the trench. Sometimes nowhere at all. Can a life function without presence? If the body keeps moving but the soul stays behind, which part is truly alive? At night, you take long walks through empty streets. The cobblestones glisten from rain. The lamps hum softly, almost like artillery at a distance. You find yourself counting steps, breaths, shadows. It calms you, not because it's peaceful, but because it's measurable, predictable, a rhythm you can trust. Neighbors greet you politely. You smile, the same polite ghost of one. They call you quiet, respectable, dependable. They don't know you're still listening, not to them, but to the hum beneath everything, waiting for the sound that says it's time to dock. Do you ever feel like you're living in rehearsal for a life that already ended? Would you trade numbness for pain if it meant feeling real again? You stop noticing seasons. Rain becomes fog, fog becomes snow. The world moves around you, but never with you. Holidays pass like rumors. You see flags, fireworks, parades. They used to mean victory. Now they just mean noise. One afternoon, a child drops a toy soldier in the street. You pick it up and hand it back. The boy grins, a pure, clean smile untouched by history. You try to smile back, but something in your chest twists. The figure's face is chipped, one arm missing. You recognize that expression, defiant, proud, doomed. It was yours once. You go home early that day. You sit by the window and stare at the horizon until it disappears. The sun sets, rises, sets again. You lose track. The clock ticks on. Your hands twitch sometimes like they're still waiting for orders. When does duty end? Can you retire from war if it still wakes up inside you every morning? That night, you dream of the trench again, but this time it's cleaner. The mud is gone. The bodies are gone. Only the sound remains, faint and steady, like breathing from under the earth. You wake up with dirt under your nails. You don't remember why. You look at your reflection and whisper, "I'm home." The mirror doesn't believe you. Neither do you. Peace is supposed to sound like breathing, steady, gentle, human. But this peace feels mechanical, like the world exhaling only because it forgot how to hold its breath. The newspapers call it victory. They print photographs of smiling men, waving flags, the illusion of closure. You stare at those pictures longer than you should. The smiles look strained. The eyes, yours among them, are the same eyes that stared into craters. Can peace exist if the people who remember it don't believe in it? What happens when calm starts to sound rehearsed? You tell yourself it's over, that the world learned its lesson, that the blood was enough. But somewhere deep down, you know better. Men don't forget war, they archive it. They polish it, package it, turn it into stories told to children who think bravery is the point. You hear speeches again, new ones. Politicians talking about rebuilding, about pride, about honor. The same words, different uniforms. The tone hasn't changed. Only the audience has. You watch the crowd cheer and you wonder, how many of them know what that cheer will cost? Have you ever felt history watching itself repeat? Would you warn them if you could? Or would you let them learn the hard way like you did? The world moves on quickly. Factories hum again for peace this time, they say. Men return to work, women hang laundry in the sun, children play with sticks that look suspiciously like rifles. You can't help but notice the rhythm returning, familiar, dangerous. The tone of the headlines, the cadence of parades, the whisper of flags catching wind. It's all music you've heard before. You start walking farther from town, out into fields where no one goes anymore. The earth there is uneven, pocked with forgotten trenches now filled with grass. You stand in one and feel the weight of ghosts pressing up from below. The air still smells faintly of rust. Can a landscape remember pain? If the ground could speak, what would it say about the men buried in its sleep? You kneel and run your hand through the dirt. It feels warm, alive. But beneath that warmth, a pulse. Slow, patient, ancient. You tell yourself it's just imagination. But deep down, it feels like the world is breathing again, drawing in air for another scream. In the distance, you hear church bells. They sound like artillery from far away. You close your eyes, count the seconds between rings, waiting for an explosion that never comes. Not yet. Would you rather know when the next storm will come, or live in ignorance until it hits? Is peace real if it only exists between reloads? You talk less now. People think it's humility. It's not. It's exhaustion, the quiet kind that sits behind your eyes and whispers, "Not again." You watch new soldiers march through the town square one morning. Fresh faces, straight backs, laughter that hasn't learned fear yet. They look like you once did. You want to stop them, to tell them the truth, that the medals aren't worth the nightmares, that courage rots faster than flesh. But you don't. You just stand there, hands in pockets, and let them pass. You know how this story goes. It always starts with flags, ends with funerals. And somewhere in between, the world forgets what dying sounds like. Can humanity survive its own memory? Or do we need to forget just enough to make the same mistake again? You head home before the parade ends. Behind you, the drums echo through the streets, the same rhythm, the same march. You close the door, sit in the dark, and wait for the silence to return. It doesn't. It never will. You light a candle and whisper to the ghosts again. Tell them what we learned. But they stay quiet. Maybe they already tried. Maybe no one listened. Outside, thunder rolls, distant, polite, promising nothing and everything. You smile bitterly. You've heard that sound before. It always begins the same way, with a single, trembling breath. They call it a celebration. You call it an echo. The flags are new, the uniforms clean, the drums too loud to ignore. The whole town gathers beneath a sky so blue it feels almost cruel. Children wave ribbons. Old men salute. Mothers weep into handkerchiefs embroidered with pride instead of grief. You stand in the back, hands in your coat pockets, unsure if you belong here at all. Have you ever stood in a crowd and felt invisible? Can victory sound hollow if you're the only one who hears the silence underneath it? The mayor gives a speech, the same words you've heard before, just rearranged. He speaks of courage, sacrifice, heroes who gave everything so others could live free. The crowd applauds on cue. You feel your stomach twist, because you know those heroes didn't give, they were taken. And freedom wasn't earned. It was purchased in blood by people who never got to see it. You look at the banners fluttering overhead, bright, proud, freshly painted. You think about how easily cloth hides decay. The smell of perfume and roasted chestnuts drifts through the air. It almost masks the scent that never leaves your nose, the damp metallic ghost of trenches. If history wears makeup, does that make it more beautiful or more dangerous? Why do we decorate what should make us weep? A brass band begins to play. The melody is triumphant, the kind written by men who never heard real thunder. You watch as soldiers march by, crisp uniforms, gleaming boots. Their rifles catch the light. The people cheer. You flinch every time the boots strike pavement in rhythm. It's too precise, too familiar, the sound of obedience dressed as pride. One of the soldiers looks your way. He can't be more than 18. He grins. You nod back, and for a moment you envy him, not for his courage but for his ignorance. Would you protect someone's innocence if it meant letting them walk into the same fire? Is ignorance a sin or a mercy? The parade turns a corner and the street falls quiet again. Paper streamers litter the cobblestones like tiny surrender flags. The cheering fades, replaced by chatter, then by nothing. You find yourself alone, surrounded by confetti that already looks dirty. It rains lightly, soft drops dissolving the colors into gray. You crouch, pick up a damp scrap of red ribbon. It bleeds dye onto your fingertips, thin, bright, familiar. You stare at it for a long time. Someone might mistake it for a cut. You don't correct them. Can color lie? If blood and celebration look the same, how do you tell them apart? You wander to the edge of town, where the noise fades completely. The silence that remains isn't peaceful. It's waiting. The same silence that used to fall between bombardments. You recognize it instantly. The world doesn't change, it just forgets. You sit on a bench, the sound of distant cheering still echoing faintly through the valley. You close your eyes and imagine what they're celebrating. Not the end of suffering, but the illusion that it ended cleanly. You want to believe it too. But belief feels like betrayal. Would you rather live with painful truth or comforting lies? Does forgetting heal, or does it guarantee another wound? The rain grows heavier. People run for cover. You don't move. You let the water soak through your coat until it feels like the trench again. Heavy, cold, grounding. A memory you can still trust. By the time the sky clears, the flags are limp, the confetti melted. Tomorrow, the streets will be swept clean as if none of it happened. As if the war was only ever a rumor. You stand, look back toward the empty square and whisper, "It's not over. It never is." The wind takes your words away. Maybe it's better that way. No one would listen anyway. The first thing you notice is how clean it all is. The floors shine. The glass cases gleam. There's no smell here. No mud, no metal, no decay. Just polish and air conditioning. They call it the Great War Exhibit. You call it a graveyard with better lighting. Can memory be sanitized? If you wash away the blood, does the story still bleed? The guide speaks softly, as if afraid of waking something. He points to helmets, rifles, uniforms, relics of horror now arranged like trophies. Visitors nod solemnly, whispering words like sacrifice and duty. You stand behind them, hands in your pockets, watching their faces glow with a pale reflection of glass. They look moved. You feel nothing. No, that's not true. You feel anger trying to disguise itself as silence. There's a trench diorama, wooden walls, fake mud, a looped sound of thunder through hidden speakers. A child presses his face against the glass, fascinated. His mother reads the plaque aloud, "Reconstruction of soldier life, conditions harsh, morale strong." You almost laugh. Morale strong. You remember what morale actually looked like. Men whispering to their own hands to stop shaking. You turn away before you have to watch the boy pretend to aim the little wooden rifle. Would you correct a lie if no one wanted the truth? Can history tell the story of suffering without turning it into theater? In the next room you find letters. Typed, framed, beautifully displayed. One of them is yours. You recognize the phrasing immediately, the sentence about the rations, the one about the good spirits. They never show the other pages. The ones you burned. The ones where you stopped pretending. You wonder who donated them. Maybe your mother. Maybe someone who wanted to believe you came home whole. You can't blame them. People need their illusions tidy. Even grief gets edited for comfort. If someone rewrote your pain to make it easier to remember, would you let them? Does truth belong to the one who lived it, or the one who can afford to frame it? Farther down the corridor, you find a glass case holding a soldier's boots, cracked, stiff, perfectly centered. The sign reads, "Recovered from Flanders Field, circa 1917. You recognize the stitching. You remember how the soles felt after weeks in the mud. You don't need the sign to tell you where they came from. You know the weight. You know the smell. You know that whoever wore them never walked out. You reach out, palm hovering above the glass. You almost expect the mud to seep through to stain the floor again. But it doesn't. Everything here has been tamed, flattened into history. Even the ghosts behave themselves. Can ghosts haunt a place that has no dirt left? Or do they leave once we've made their suffering aesthetic? A man beside you murmurs something about bravery. His companion nods, eyes wet. You want to tell them bravery was never the point, that most of the time it was just fear in cleaner clothes. But you don't. You've learned that truth doesn't echo in rooms like this, it just fades behind the glass. You walk to the exit. There's a donation box labeled, "Preserve the Memory." You drop a coin in. It clinks too loudly, like the sound of a bullet casing hitting stone. The receptionist smiles. You nod. Outside, the air tastes real again, damp, imperfect, alive. You sit on a bench and watch the sky darken. The world around you has forgotten the sound of mud sucking at boots. Forgotten the smell of rain mixing with rot. And maybe that's mercy. But it feels like betrayal. Would you rather be remembered beautifully or truthfully? When pain becomes history, does it lose its warning? You close your eyes. In the distance, thunder rolls, soft, harmless, almost theatrical. You almost laugh again. Maybe this is what history does. Teaches the next generation to applaud the thunder and forget the rain. The paper feels fragile, thinner than you remember. You bought it on impulse, passing a shop that sold stationery for weddings and condolences. Your hand hovered between the two aisles for too long. In the end, you chose blank pages. They seemed more honest. You sit at your kitchen table. The lamp hums. The pen trembles. You stare at the paper until the whiteness begins to hurt. Then finally you write. Have you ever tried to speak to someone who isn't here anymore? Do you write to remember or to make yourself believe they still exist? You start with a name, one you haven't said aloud in years. The ink hesitates, bleeding at the edges like it's unsure of its permission. Then the words begin to flow. You write about the days before the gas, before the metals, before the forgetting. You describe the smell of tea in the trench, the sound of a man laughing through a cough. You write as if they're still listening. Maybe they are. Each sentence feels like exhaling something poisonous. You stop often. Your hand shakes. The letters come in bursts, fragments of truth too heavy to hold all at once. If you could speak to the dead, would you tell them what happened after? Would you confess the ways you kept living when they couldn't? The first letter is to Ellis, the one who always hummed before the shelling. You tell him the song reached home before he did, that a girl in town hums it now when she sells bread. You tell him you still flinch when you hear it. Then you apologize for surviving him. The second is to McCarthy, the joker, the loud one. You write about the parade, about the flags, about how they called it victory. You tell him they put his name on a plaque but spelled it wrong. You say you wanted to correct it but didn't, because somehow even the mistake felt truer. Do the dead care about our accuracy or just our honesty? When you write to them, are you trying to comfort them or yourself? The letters pile up. You don't mail them, of course. You fold each one carefully and place it in an old tin, the kind that used to hold tobacco and now holds memories that burn slower. The tin fills faster than you expect. You start labeling the lids: Flanders, home, gas, rain, categories of pain. Sometimes at night you open one just to read the words again. They sound strange when spoken aloud, like someone else's handwriting wearing your voice. You wonder if the ghosts hear it, if they understand that the living keep inventing rituals to forgive themselves. Can guilt be buried, or does it just change shape over time? If you could send a letter to your past self, what would it say? You imagine them reading your letters, sitting somewhere beyond mud and smoke, half listening. You picture Ellis smiling, McCarthy rolling his eyes, the others nodding quietly like they always did. You picture them forgiving you. You almost believe it. When you finish the last one, you don't sign it. Names don't matter anymore. Only the act of writing, the proof that someone still remembers. You place the tin back on the shelf, behind the medals and the framed photo that no longer looks like you. The house creaks softly, as if settling around the ghost you've invited in. You whisper goodnight, to no one, to everyone. Would you write if you knew no one would ever read it? Is remembrance a burden or a blessing? You turn off the lamp. The darkness feels familiar again, like ink that never stopped spreading. The evening begins soft. Rain on windows. The smell of wet earth. You sit by the fire, a book open in your lap, unread for hours. You've grown used to this stillness, the illusion of safety dressed in routine. Then the storm comes. Not sudden, but slow, the way nightmares creep instead of strike. Lightning flashes once, twice, like a camera taking pictures of ghosts. You count between the flashes and the sound. 1, 2, 3. Thunder. Heavy. Familiar. Have you ever heard something ordinary and felt your whole body remember danger? Can sound carry you back to a life you thought you'd buried? The rain thickens. Wind claws at the shutters. The thunder rolls again, longer this time, like distant artillery. Your chest tightens before your brain can argue with it. You try to breathe slowly to remind yourself, it's just weather. But the air feels wrong, too thick, too close. You drop the book. The sound of it hitting the floor makes you flinch. Your pulse spikes. You reach for something that isn't there, your rifle, your mask, your helmet, reaching through decades to grasp a ghost of survival. You stand without thinking. Instinct takes over. You crouch low, scanning the corners of the room like it's a trench. Your eyes dart to the window. Lightning flashes again, illuminating the reflection of a man you barely recognize, old, trembling, wild-eyed. What part of us keeps fighting long after the war is gone? Does the body forget slower than the soul? You drop to the floor as the next thunderclap hits. The sound splits the sky open. Your hands cover your head before you can stop them. You taste dirt that isn't there. You smell smoke that hasn't existed for 40 years. For a moment, time folds. You are both old and young, crouched in mud, heart hammering, praying to a god that never answered. You stay there for a long time. The rain hammers harder, each drop a drumbeat in the dark. You whisper names without realizing it. Ellis, McCarthy, Grant. The ghosts return not to haunt you, but to keep you company. Can trauma ever be exorcised, or does it simply learn to whisper? Would you erase your pain if it meant losing the proof that you survived? The thunder fades, but your breathing doesn't. You stay on the floor until silence feels believable again. Your knees ache when you stand. Your reflection in the window looks smaller now, almost ashamed. You stare at it, whispering the truth you've always known. It never left. The storm outside begins to pass. The fire has gone out. You move slowly, carefully, like you might wake something if you make too much noise. You pick up the fallen book. The page has warped from the rain that slipped in through the open window. You trace the wet line with your finger, a scar across paper. Does healing mean silence, or simply learning to live with the noise? If peace means forgetting, do you still want it? You close the book. You don't remember what it was about. Maybe it doesn't matter. The storm leaves behind a strange calm, the kind that feels like an apology. You sink back into the chair and let the sound of dripping water fill the room. The rhythm is almost soothing now. Almost. You sit there until morning, eyes open, waiting for thunder to come back. It always does. Eventually. Morning light crawls slowly across the floor. It takes its time, unhurried, like the world itself is finally learning patience again. You sit in your chair by the window, wrapped in a blanket that smells faintly of wood smoke and rain. Outside, the storm has moved on. The air is clean. Even the silence feels lighter. You stir a cup of tea, your hands still tremble but less than before. The sound of the spoon against porcelain is soft, rhythmic, almost like a heartbeat. For the first time in a long time, you don't flinch at it. Have you ever realized that peace isn't silence, but gentleness? Can healing sound like something as simple as a spoon against a cup? You glance toward the shelf, the old tin of letters, the medals, the photograph. They're all still there, but they've stopped accusing you. Now they simply exist, witnesses, not burdens. You smile faintly. You even whisper thank you. Not to them, but to the part of yourself that kept going. The ghosts are quieter now. Not gone, just resting too. They visit sometimes in dreams, standing in the distance, no longer calling out. Just watching, making sure you sleep. Do you think the people we've lost ever forgive us for moving on? Or is moving on the only way to honor them? You rise slowly and step outside. The morning air tastes like earth and promise. The field beyond your home glistens with dew, the same color as the mist that once hung over the trenches, but softer, kinder. The ground no longer feels haunted. Just old, just tired, just real. You walk barefoot, feeling the cold soil press against your feet. It's the same soil that swallowed your friends, the same earth that held your fear. Now it feels like it's holding you upright. You close your eyes, breathe deep, and whisper, "I made it." Is survival a victory or simply an act of defiance? Can you forgive yourself for outliving the noise? A bird lands nearby, small, ordinary, curious. You watch it tilt its head and hop closer. You realize you've been waiting for this without knowing it, a sign of life that expects nothing from you. It sings once, a single clear note. You listen. It doesn't sound like a gunshot anymore. You smile. It's uneven, clumsy, but real. You whisper to the empty sky, "You can stop now." The wind answers by brushing the grass, gentle as breath. You sit down right there in the dirt and feel the world move beneath you, steady, alive, forgiving. For the first time in years, you don't feel like you're borrowing the day. You belong to it. When the fight finally ends, what remains? If you could rest without forgetting, would that be enough? The sun climbs higher. Your eyes grow heavy. You lean back, let your head rest against the earth that once terrified you. You think of thunder, distant now, not menacing, just weather. You think of laughter, the real kind, not nervous, not forced. You think of the silence that comes after a promise kept. And for the first time since the gun stopped, you let yourself close your eyes, not out of fear, but trust. Sleep finds you easily. No marching, no shouting, no smoke. Just breath, just warmth, just rest.